Hey there, Crystal Thompson here with Simon Says Stamp. Today I have a card doing a watercolor background with one of the newest releases from Simon. This card is super easy and it's a full process watercolor card showing you how I watercolored this background and then using this Wish I Could Hug You beautiful die, also a brand new release from Simon. Stay tuned for the full process. I think you're going to love this tutorial and how easy and minimalistic it really is. So again, we're going to use the Wish I Could Hug You die set. It's actually quite large. I would say it's about 3 inches by 4 inches tall. And then for our background is this awesome rubber stamp. It's the Mountainscapes. And we're going to set that aside. I'm going to begin with the Wish I Could Hug You. I actually cut this out of some scrap olive green cardstock. I love to keep all my scraps, especially if I ended up printing them. I like to use those. We're going to glue that together onto that beige and set it aside. Next, I have the Mountainscapes, and I have a piece of watercolor cardstock 4¼ by 5½, and I have stamped some taupe light brown ink on it, and I don't have an acrylic block large enough for this. So what I did is I flipped it over, I added my ink, and then I placed it onto this watercolor cardstock. As you saw, I gave it a nice little massage and let it set. Now this is a full process watercolor. So since I used ink that wasn't made for watercoloring, you're going to find that when I add water to it, some of the edges of the mountains or the different little clouds will kind of dissipate with the water. So I'm going to be super careful about not touching them. And so using this angled brush, I'm going to come in and add some of this bright blue. And this is a Koi watercolor palette. You can use really any watercolor. One of the biggest things is that do not use too much water. And we're really going to tap our watercolor here. We're not really going to brush it on. Next, I'm going to grab this olive green, and again, we are going to move on to the bottom part of the card. I don't want there to be any running of colors, so we're going to do opposite ends. So as you can see, using the same angled brush, I'm going to add this color to only one edge of the trees, and what that's going to do, it's going to dry up. So when I come back with a wetter, more moist brush, it's going to drag this color back and not make it look so harsh, and that's what we like about watercolors. So as you can see, I've dragged it with water, and then if you want to add just a little more of a different green, feel free to just grab a little more green and then just dab it onto the edges of where you added your olive. Next, I'm going to work on the bottoms of my mountains. And so one of the biggest tips here, I am not an artist when it comes to watercolor. I Googled watercolored mountains and I found an artist that used these colors. I was wondering, how am I going to color these mountains and not have them be snowy capped mountains, right? And so she used a combination of grays and browns and then added those shadows with a dark black, and it really made the thing look super cool. And again, the biggest trick to this is not using a ton of water. You can always come back and lighten things up, but it's really hard to remove color. So as you can see, so once I've added all my shadows, I add more water to my brush, obviously not in excess that it's gonna drip down into my little trees, and then dragging that color, those browns and that black, to make it look into that watercolor effect. And I don't want any of those harsh lines. So if I needed to dry up and then come back, I do allow time for that. So the whole thing did take me about, I don't know, 8 minutes to color this, but it totally made this card look completely different. It does completely look like a work of art. And yeah, it looks like a stamp, but if you really didn't want it to look like a stamp, you can use even a lighter ink color, like a really light beige when you're stamping your mountainscapes, and it would look like you drew this. But for this purposes, gonna use this brown. I like the way, at least with my color selections, it match really well. And I'm gonna end the whole watercolor thing by adding a bit of black and letting it dry. So as you can see, once it's fully dried, you want to put it onto your card base. Be sure you use a really nice thick adhesive. I'm going to bring the Wish I Could Hug You again. The inner Wish I Could Hug You is in an olive, which I thought would match my olive trees, and that's the color selection that I did for that. And then the background, the shadow of this is just a nice tan. So I really thought that the clouds could use a bit more of a just more dimension. So I'm going to grab some white Nuvo drops, and this is just your basic good old school Nuvo, and I'm going to just dab this onto or into the clouds that are already here. I didn't want to add watercolor to them because I knew I would mess them up, especially with white. And if you want to add more blue on the edges of the clouds, it's going to make them stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to bring in with those Nuvos and just do dabs of color. Another cool effect for these clouds would be some like puff paint. That would look really neat. So there's a ton of different things that you can do with this. Clear would work as well, but I wanted to be sure that this white would pop up. And once it's dry, the clouds end up being kind of shiny. So you can use matte or you can use a shiny Nuvo. Ultimately, it just makes it look a little bit different. And I really enjoy the different color combinations of that olive on the Wish I Could Hug You to the olive of the trees. And it doesn't look too shabby, right? And guys, that does it for me. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Again, not a watercolor artist, but I could not resist watercoloring this image, especially because I didn't want a Copic color. I thought that would take forever. And so if you're new to my YouTube channel, please give it a like, subscribe. All descriptions of what I use below for products are down below. And this is a Simon Says stamp, brand new product from the Make Magic release that was dropped today, July 22nd. We'll see you guys later. Have an amazing day.